I've been kind of rambling here, so let's recap some picks. After I took Flacco, Kenny Britt, Mike Williams, Matt Schaub, and Golden Tate were taken. Schaub is another one of those players who's kind of like the Mendenhall of quarterbacks, really. He's unexciting, but in a 2-quarterback league, he's going to provide the stats you need from your quarterback 3. A guy who can come in, put up 15 points, And while, again, it's not exciting, it's not something you really want to have on your team or you feel like you have won the draft when you make that pick, it's still important to make that pick when the time is right and ensure that you have a consistent fantasy team week in, week out. I'm going to pause here until it gets closer to my pick, and I'll be right back. So after the Golden Tate pick, Brandon Weeden, Michael Floyd, Lance Moore, and Andre Brown were the next players selected. I was really hoping Andre Brown would slide to me there. Sidney Rice was just picked. So my desire to get a running back in this spot has faded with the fact that Brown was the one guy I really wanted. So I'm going to look at wide receiver and tight end here with these last 2 picks. I do want to take a moment and talk about mock drafts and how you watching this video and maybe reading a recap of this draft or any other mock draft later, you need to be careful when you watch these things or read these articles, because a lot of times what players will do when there's nothing on the line is make bad picks or make picks that are meant to be flashy and not necessarily the right pick or the smart pick. And I try to, when I do these, approach these drafts from the angle that I'm drafting like I would really draft in a league I was going to play out. Now, when someone takes Michael Floyd in the 11th round ahead of, not many, you can make the argument over a lot of these other wide receivers for sure, but he might not necessarily have made that pick if it wasn't some hyped up young prospect like Michael Floyd. You know what I'm saying? I do feel a player like Sidney Rice might be a more reliable player than Floyd in this round if you were going to make that pick. This comes back to that Alex Smith quarterback pick. It was like whoever picked Alex Smith obviously believes that Alex Smith is going to have value this year, especially in a 2-quarterback league. That doesn't, just the fact that you want to tout Alex Smith doesn't make it correct to pick him over more proven commodities like the Joe Flaccos and Matt Schaubs of the world. I think you can make the case for Smith over Schaub, but it just auto drafted me Tavon Austin. Well, that's too bad. I was talking too much. I probably would have taken Vincent Brown ahead of Tavon in that case. So with my last pick in this little mock we're doing here, I'm going to look at tight end, and the one I'm targeting here is Jordan Cameron, and the hype's been pretty unreal since he caught 2 TDs in that preseason game, but he is a guy who is set up to succeed as a fantasy tight end, and he came up a lot in the written recap we did of my last attempt at a draft video. Myself, Asher Malk, and Kevin Roberts, and Scott Watson, we all talked about how we thought Jordan Cameron was a good value, a good pick, and I don't know if he went that much later than where I'm going to try to pick him here, which is the 5th pick of the 12th round. The other tight ends available at this point are Greg Olsen, Jermichael Finley, Owen Daniels, Antonio Gates, Martellus Bennett, Pettigrew, Myers, and then Cameron as far as ADP goes. I talked about how I like Fred Davis and Dwayne Allen and Rob Hausler, but I think you can make the case for Cameron over any of these guys. Greg Olsen is probably the safest pick of them, but with tight ends, you can kind of never tell from year to year. There's a lot of turnover, aside from like the top-notch guys, and they're all drafted high for that reason, But when you're down at this point in the draft, you're not really going to get a consistent guy necessarily, unless he comes out of nowhere. And I do think that Cameron has the opportunity to become that player who, while Greg Olsen will have some great games this season, Jordan Cameron could be consistently good on a week-to-week basis. With that said, there's a good chance he'll be taken before my pick here, because I have a feeling a lot of the other drafters in this mock have waited on tight end. If this were a real draft, and I do want to throw that caveat out because I believe it's important to remind ourselves of that, I might not take a tight end in this spot. Bryce Brown, Ronnie Hillman, Bernard Pierce, Ben Tate, like these are all potential running back selections I can make, and there are a ton of good wide receivers still available. Let's take a look at them. A lot of upside from guys like Blackman, DeAndre Hopkins, Kendall Wright, Vincent Brown. Vincent Brown's a number 1 wide receiver on a team. Now, that team has a bad offensive line and Phil Rivers at quarterback, but that doesn't mean that he's not going to have value. And Emmanuel Sanders, another guy who is basically going to get a bunch of receptions by default. And in a half-point PPR, like, he's going to have value. So these are all picks that I probably would make over a tight end, but I will admit in this spot, the fact that the mock draft is over after I make this pick, I'm going to take a tight end just to fill out my roster. But maybe in practice it doesn't equate to the real thing, the big game, when you would continue to wait on tight end and let someone else take Jordan Cameron if they really want him, and then settle for Dwayne Allen, settle for Tyler Eifert, Fred Davis, even Zach Sudfeld of the Patriots kind of going forward. But with that said, we're looking at a run of tight ends here in the last round. Greg Olsen, then I took Cameron, then Jermichael Finley. So it's clear that not everybody is drafting the way they necessarily would draft in a real league. But yeah, let's kind of recap the roster I've put together here. At quarterback, I have Rodgers and Vick as my starters. Joe Flacco as the backup. 3 different bye weeks, which is, as I stated earlier, something that I do care about in a 2 QB league. At running back, we have Lynch and Alfred Morris as kind of the backbone of my rushing attack, but I also have Darren McFadden, Rashard Mendenhall, and I probably would have taken a running back where it auto-drafted Tavon Austin for me. But with the running back, wide receiver, tight end flex, I don't mind necessarily loading up a little bit more on wide receivers, especially because the league has a PPR setting. I feel better about starting a wide receiver in my flex spot. But beyond Tavon Austin at wide receiver, my top 3 are Cobb, Colston, and Decker. Cobb is a pretty hyped up player this year, and I do like him a lot. Colston and Decker are probably more boring picks in general, but it shows me still having Stevie Johnson, which is not the case, I'm pretty sure, but I don't know. What can you do about that? And at tight end, Jordan Cameron. I like the makeup of this team from the 6th pick. The fact that I got both Aaron Rodgers and Marshawn Lynch, I'm very happy about that. Like, if this were a real league, I would feel really good about that start, and that makes up for any sort of deficiencies we had later, like when I did take Cobb over Chris Johnson. Now, if this team had Chris Johnson instead of Darren McFadden and some downgrade over Randall Cobb, I think I would like this team even more, just because I would be so set at running back. Anyway, that does it for the draft. Thank you all for watching. This one's been kind of hectic and kind of fast-paced, if only because there were 60 seconds per pick. But thanks for watching, and make sure to check out everything else on the Fake Football. We have rankings, we have Readers Leagues that are filling up fast. Come and join us, draft along with us, and we'll catch you next time on Greg Sauce's Draft Videos. Adios.